Daring greatly, how the courage to be vulnerable transforms the way we live, love, parent, and lead. This book investigates how accepting one's vulnerability and imperfection is essential for genuine involvement and social connection. The author's goal in explaining our deep-seated reasons for shame and showing how to embrace our vulnerability is to provide guidance for a better private and professional life, as well as to initiate a fundamental transformation in our shame-based society, which, according to the author, requires a new culture of vulnerability. The author, Brené Brown, Ph.D., is an award-winning and famous research professor at the University of Houston Graduate College of Social Work, who has spent over a decade studying shame and vulnerability. Her other publications on the subject include I Thought It Was Just Me 2007 and The Gift of Imperfection 2010. Whether it's a parent scolding you for doing something wrong or your employer publicly calling you out for a mistake, we've all felt shame at some point. In fact, shame appears to be an essential component of the human condition. But did you know that guilt is actually incredibly detrimental, preventing us from reaching our greatest potential? In this book, you will learn what shame is and where it comes from. You will learn how it creates a sense of unworthiness and how it is prevalent in our culture. Additionally, you'll learn how to overcome emotions of shame by embracing vulnerability. Vulnerability refers to the openness to publicly accept failures and flaws, which can help you build resistance to emotions of shame and be content with what you have. You'll also learn how this culture of vulnerability serves our jobs, schools, and families. Let's now dive into the 8 main ideas of this book. 1. Shame stems from the dread of social isolation, which is natural yet destructive. Shame is a fundamental human need for connection, love, and belonging, which is deeply rooted in our social nature. We are wired to seek the company of others, which has been crucial for our survival. Social disconnection causes pain, which is reinforced by our brain chemistry. Our feelings of shame stem from the belief that we are not worthy of the love, connection, and belonging we need to survive. Shame is harmful to us, as it prevents us from trying and disconnecting from others. It makes us shy away from putting ourselves out there, whether it's presenting our work or expressing our feelings. However, having a sense of our unconditional worthiness can lead to courage and taking risks. Research has shown that shame weakens our ability to believe we can improve ourselves and leads to negative destructive behavior. In essence, shame has 0 positive effects. Although it's only human to feel shame occasionally, the adoption of shame-related behavior in society is concerning. 2. Shame is prevalent in today's culture, leading to feelings of inadequacy and lack of worth. In today's world, we constantly present ourselves and our lives to the public, leading to a never-enough culture where we live in constant fear that we are not enough. This culture is shaped by traumatic events such as 9/11, random acts of violence, and natural disasters, which have impacted our families, workplaces, and schools. When we cannot heal, a fear of scarcity takes over the function performed by post-traumatic stress. Instead of overcoming the trauma by processing it, we try to numb the fear by seeking to acquire more things and be more. This never-enough thinking kickstarts a cycle of comparison, shame, and disengagement. Comparing ourselves with Hollywood stars, models, and millionaires triggers shame, representing our fear of not being enough and unworthy of human connection. Shame leads to disengagement, as we stop trying to improve ourselves because we believe we can never be good enough anyway. Feelings of shame and disconnection are rife and harmful in our society. To overcome this destructive path, we must embrace one's vulnerability and embrace our vulnerability. 3. Vulnerability is inherent in all emotions and does not indicate weakness. Vulnerability is often associated with failure and disappointment, but it is actually the root of positive emotions like love, joy, and empathy. It involves uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure, as we cannot be certain if someone will reciprocate our feelings. Love entails vulnerability, and embracing vulnerability shows strength and courage, not weakness. Exposure to ourselves makes us vulnerable, but it also means being courageous. It is easier to avoid failure than to take a risk. For example, the author was fearful of speaking publicly about her research, but by embracing her vulnerability, she was courageous, not weak. We all desire love and connection in our lives, and embracing our vulnerability can be beneficial in both personal and professional lives. 4. Instead of avoiding vulnerability, we should embrace it to enhance ourselves and our relationships. Vulnerability is often seen as a negative aspect of human nature, but it is an essential quality that can be embraced positively. It allows us to experience our emotions authentically and empathize, fostering connections with others. Openness and honesty are reciprocated, and vulnerability and willingness to share feelings are often the moments we feel most connected. In professional development, taking risks and exposing our work to external criticism can improve ourselves. Failing means learning something new. However, if we don't embrace our vulnerability, we may increase it. A study showed that people who believed they were invulnerable to advertising were more susceptible to it. Vulnerability is a central part of our emotional lives, and if we acknowledge its existence, it can become a positive instrument. Shame is a common way to combat vulnerability. So to embrace vulnerability, we must first learn how to rid ourselves of it. By acknowledging and embracing our inherent vulnerability, we can learn to be more open and honest with ourselves, leading to a more fulfilling life. 5. Understanding and expressing our shame can help us build resilience and gain empathy from others. Because shame is precisely a fear of self-exposure, it's not a feeling we usually share easily with others. We've all wished sometimes for the ground to open and swallow us up, shielding us from the judgmental glances and suppressed laughter of others. And often the feeling of shame is more painful to us than whatever it is we're ashamed about. Shame can certainly be awful. So how can we resolve it? Talking about our feelings of shame and naming them often diminishes their power. In fact, verbalizing our shame actually makes us resilient to it. This is because shame gains power through being unspeakable. The less we talk about it, the more control it has over our lives. The problem is that it's natural for us to keep our shame to ourselves. Shame doesn't even require the presence of other people. Most of us are likely to be our own worst critic and maintain a stockpile of shame to draw from. But if we generate enough self-compassion, we're able to endure shameful experiences, not only without feeling crushed, but to also emerge on the other side as more engaged and courageous. In other words, we make ourselves shame resilient. When we're resilient to shame, in situations where we'd normally feel shame, we can instead feel the empathy of others. Since we feel shame only when we fear others' opinions of us, we can become resilient to it by reaching out and verbalizing it. In doing so, others can then understand our fears and emotions, leading them to empathize with us, and we can then replace any feelings of shame with those of received empathy. We've all experienced the relief of opening up to others, our problems melting away as we begin to feel understood. This is a truly powerful weapon against shame. Gaining resilience towards shame is just the first step on our way to embracing vulnerability and to living a more engaged and connected life. 6. When we are content with ourselves, we are more likely to open up about our vulnerabilities. The desire to improve and acquire more often stems from a desire to shield ourselves from harm and pain. However, vulnerability cannot be overcome, and most people hide it through behavioral patterns like perfectionism, foreboding joy, and numbing ourselves with alcohol and other drugs. This fear of never enough can lead to unmasking ourselves and revealing our vulnerability. By ridding ourselves of the unreachable goal of perfection, we can open ourselves up to possible criticism or failure without letting it define who we are. Similarly, by accepting that we are worthy of momentary joy, we can be grateful in those moments, not afraid of imagined tragedy. By being satisfied with what we have, we can embrace our vulnerability, freeing us to lose the masks that only serve to harm us. Without such masks, we can finally see ourselves and be seen by those around us. A culture of vulnerability can be beneficial at work, school, and home. 7. A culture of shame is harmful to any company or school. Shame-based motivational strategies, such as benchmarking and shaming, can have harmful effects on productivity. They can lead to disengagement, which disconnects individuals from their surroundings and hinders creativity, innovation, and learning. Disengagement can result in a lack of emotional investment and inaction, hindering individuals from participating in their work and learning. No workplace or school can function without creativity and innovation. Learning involves independent thinking and producing one's own questions, answers, and ideas. Businesses can't function without innovation, as they create new products and adapt old ones for a constantly changing marketplace. An atmosphere of shame in workplaces and schools is harmful and counterproductive. To remain effective and productive, companies and schools should adopt or develop alternative motivational strategies, such as encouraging vulnerability. This approach encourages individuals to think independently and produce their own questions, answers, and ideas. 8. To prevent disengagement, leaders in school, employment, and society should promote vulnerability rather than shame to help children develop a feeling of worthiness. Changing societal patterns requires individuals, including influential employers, managers, teachers, and parents, to introduce a culture of vulnerability. A culture of worthiness and openness towards vulnerability can combat shame-based problems and transfer values to workplaces, schools, and families. Leaders in responsible and influential positions have the power to embrace vulnerability on a professional and societal level, rehumanizing education and work. Heads of divisions have more opportunities to shape behavioral patterns and combat shame than other employees, and their success is connected to every change they encourage. As a person of influence, expressing problems or asking for help can create an atmosphere of trust, where vulnerability is not frowned upon, but used to improve the working and learning environment. Work, family, and schools all suffer from symptoms of shame and disengagement, but they can be turned around by a culture of worthiness and by embracing vulnerability. To foster engaged, connected lives for children, it is crucial to teach them the principles of worthiness and vulnerability. Children experience shame as trauma, which can impact their lives throughout their lives. A shame-free home environment is essential for children to develop a deep-rooted sense of worthiness. Parents must teach their children shame resilience by being involved and engaged and accepting their own worthiness. They should act as role models, committing to the norms and values of worthiness they want their children to inherit. Engaged parenting in a shame-free setting can help children develop a feeling of worthiness. If you can then create a culture of vulnerability at work, school, and at home, you will eliminate shame from those environments, resulting in increased creativity, engagement, and healthier families. To ensure children lead engaged, connected lives, it is crucial to teach them the principles of worthiness and vulnerability. Children experience shame as trauma, which can have long-lasting effects on their lives. If children don't experience shame, they feel worthy because they are loved unconditionally and feel a sense of belonging. To create a shame-free home environment, families should be a place where they can truly be themselves. As parents, we must teach our children shame resilience by being involved and engaged parents, as well as accepting our own worthiness. By acting on these principles in everyday life, we can benefit ourselves and those around us, leading better lives. To recap, 3 major questions were answered in these core ideas of the book. First, how does shame work? Shame is the fear of social isolation. It is entirely normal, but it is nevertheless destructive. Shame is ingrained in our culture, and it fosters a sense of unworthiness as if we will never have or be enough. What is vulnerability, and how does it solve the problem of shame? Vulnerability is at the heart of all emotions and should not be interpreted as a weakness. Instead of disregarding our vulnerabilities, we should embrace them in order to better ourselves and our relationships. Second, how do we move from shame to vulnerability? Understanding and verbalizing our shame helps us build resilience and experience empathy from others. If we are content with who we are and what we have, we will dare to reveal our vulnerability. Third, how does a culture of vulnerability serve our jobs, schools, and families? A culture of shame is poisonous in any business or institution. Leaders in school, the workplace, and society as a whole should counteract disengagement by emphasizing vulnerability over shame. Engaged and involved parenting in a shame-free setting can help children develop a feeling of self-worth. Our final thoughts on this book. To live a shame-free life, we must learn to love ourselves unconditionally and to trust in our innate worthiness when engaging with friends, family, and colleagues. In doing so, we are willing to be vulnerable because failure and rejection cannot impair our feeling of value. If you resonate with this video, please share some love. Hit that like button and share this with others who may find it useful. Join us in this wonderful book journey by subscribing to our channel. Together, let us keep learning and make a better world. Thanks for watching and see you in our next or other videos.